Move Women, Freedom Fighters, Free. When Move members Janine and Janet Africa were driven away from the state women's prison in Cambridge Springs, an ugly chapter in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania history came to a close, for it brought to an end the unjust and illegal imprisonment of Move members for almost 41 years. An imprisonment meant to destroy Move and erase them from the annals of history. Move people endured these injustices with amazing fortitude, strength, and resilience. This was perhaps best seen in the lives and struggles of Move women, who produced an incredible record of resistance, even as they endured a sentence that was, on its face, illegal. Never in Pennsylvania's history has anyone been sentenced to 100 years for third-degree murder, except Move people. They fought to defend themselves as they were thrown into the hole. They staged hunger strikes when they received unfair treatment. They also fed and cared for dogs. They worked in the earth, and they also cared for and helped their fellow women prisoners, both at Muncie and Cambridge Springs. Many of these women had their babies killed by the cops, and they kept on the move. More importantly, they kept their faith in the teachings of John Africa. They exuded dedication, will, and remarkable discipline. Move women, still on the move. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia, Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.
It's good to be here and finally see and meet everybody that has helped our family through these 41 years. And y'all might not think it was a lot because we were the ones in prison and y'all were out here. But to see and feel that kind of support and love, it fueled us, along with the teaching of John Africa, to stay strong through every situation. So we want y'all to know that y'all played an important role in this activity and in the release of Move, just as much as our Move family and the teaching of John Africa. So don't ever downplay or feel like y'all didn't give y'all part in this. Yes, we were strong and staying strong, but we had a strong foundation. We had our belief, and through John Africa's teaching, we had all of y'all. So thank you.
Hey guys, can you believe that these two sisters just a month ago were in prison after 41 years? Is it hard to believe that they look like this and are like this and have this kind of spirit and are with us all together? I am still in shock from that reality and the depth of what they bring to us, the depth of spirit, of commitment, of militance. And those of you who haven't seen that press conference that they did, we have some tapes of it, and Kamal made them, and I strongly recommend that everybody see it, because that press conference was a kind of history that you never hear. You never hear a fighting group of women. In that press conference, there was Rhea, there was Pam, there was Ramona, there was Consuela, and Carlos, one man, speaking about the men's role in supporting the women. That press conference to me is something that I will value for the rest of my life, and was a unique thing to hear. Please hear it, see it, and study it, because it tells you more about Move, who Move is, how these two sisters come out looking like this. As Janet says, look at us, look at how fit we are.
Yes. We are, thanks for belief.
Yes.
So a lot of people have died in prison. Diabetes is the main topic that's happening in there with women because of the diet they feed you. It puts weight on you, but because it doesn't have any substance to you, it makes people sick. And women have gotten sick and died in there because of their diets. But because of our belief for John Africa when they gave a garbage diet? If we had one apple, we would take that apple and cut it up and make an apple salad out of that and eat it with crackers. And even though it wasn't a potato, it was more nourishment than the food that they fed us. And this is the kind of strength that John Africa gave us to be able to live on, you know, and not eat that food and get sick from. And that's why we came out looking the way we did, the way we are, because of our belief.
And it is absolutely thrilling, thrilling to have you with us.
Thank you.
So now, a little more healthy nourishment. For those who want to believe in John Africa, there's vegan cupcakes. Right.
As you saw from the opening, we're slide this way. Okay. All right. I've slidden as far as I can slide. We welcome on 30 frames a second the incomparable Janet Africa and Janine Africa, who served 41 years wrongfully incarcerated for the crime of, I guess, I don't know, being vegan and having dreadlocks before it was acceptable in the United States of America. We're going to get to their story. I also have with me none other than Suzanne Ross, one of the greatest activists and greatest human beings I've ever known in my life. She has been a transcendent force in my life. We're going to get to you because I don't want to talk a lot. It's already 2:06 and we only have an hour. And I want to concentrate on listening as opposed to speaking. But we have Suzanne, we have Janet, we have Janine. Before we start off, you started off your press conference with a reference to Delbert Africa. And I wanted to make sure that we speak on Delbert and we speak on Mumia, and then we won't forget it later on and run out of time.
Okay, right now we're concentrating on Delbert Africa because we are all being released. But this system has always targeted Delbert. They always said he was a leader because he's real charismatic and he survived that beating August 8th. So they pinpoint him because they don't want to use him to be a beacon of strength and hope to people. And they've always treated him differently. He just had a 5-year hit put on him for seeing parole. And we put a lot of pressure on this system. We had people put pressure on this system. And because of that pressure, they took the 5-year hit off of him, and he's scheduled to see the parole board in September. But we don't want people to relax and let that pressure off because we know how they do Delbert, and we don't want people to stop until Delbert is released and home, which is why we're not really feeling like this is a celebrating time, because until all of our family is home, we're happy to be home, but we don't feel like it's going to be a celebration until everybody from the Move 9 is home. So we want people to keep that pressure on so that they do not try anything with Delbert.
Suzanne, I want you to say a few words about Mumia, because one of the things that came out in the press conference was one of the most determining factors in what happened to Mumia was his proximity to the MOVE family. And I refrain from calling it the MOVE organization. I'll never say that again in my life, because it has been my experience that MOVE is not just a family, but it's the family that I always envisioned myself having. And the people that I have met from the organization all represent the person I would like to be. Mumia was steadfast in his, I don't want to say defense of the MOVE family, but his determination to get the truth out about what was going on.
Truth-telling.
And ultimately, at that time, that was a death sentence. Tell us about the fight for Mumia.
Well, I saw Mumia a week ago. Yesterday, Monday, a week ago. And we talked almost nonstop about MOVE and about these sisters. He cannot stop talking about Janet and Janine. He cannot stop. I gave you a little piece that you might want to play. But he cannot stop talking about their strength, how they've come out. And he said, I hope I'm not being sexist, but they look so beautiful. And he talked about his recollection of them before they went to prison and before he went. Remember, their confrontation with the state that put them in prison was 1978. Mumia didn't even go into, the incident with Mumia happened in 1981, 3 years later, and then and then of course he was arrested and has always been in prison. But in that 3-year period, from the time they were arrested until he was arrested, he had known them very well. And he also had visited them once they were in prison. He visited the MOVE people. He said he was, I can't remember who it was, he was visiting as a journalist, and he came at, I think he said 8 o'clock in the morning and left at 8 o'clock at night until they said, listen, you don't want to stay in this prison, do you? Because he was so eager. Once what he saw what happened to MOVE was he was more and more eager to know everything he could learn about MOVE and everything about John Africa. And that's kind of what he talked about this time to me, because he talked a lot about what other movement do we have like this?
None.
You know, what other movement do we have? You know, I'm 82 years old.
Yeah.
I've been active for a long, long time. And there is nothing resembling this. And what MOVE has brought as lessons for the rest of the movement, when you say family, what we've all learned about the kind of love that permeates MOVE, the kind of love they show for each other, that it's not surprising they came out looking the way they do, full of love, not bitter.
Right,
do they sound bitter?
right,
Do they sound like they're
right.
out to get revenge
Right.
from the system or from people?
Right.
No, they sound
And
full
I've
of
been
love.
bitter by a lot less.
Right. Exactly, exactly. So all of that is, again, Mumia used the word the other day, and we're very reluctant, to use the word. I use it. It's almost magical. And I've been obsessed since I saw them, and since that press conference that you played, and
Right.
I understood more about how hard they had to fight, 1, to survive, 2, to keep their humanity, and to share that humanity with the other sisters in prison, what they contributed. It's like wherever they go, the hand touch, the magic touch
Right.
of love
Right.
influences everyone around them.
Right.
And so I can't stop wanting to welcome them back.
Thank you.
I can't, I'm like obsessed
Thank
you.
with this, that I was blessed to meet them. And what Mumia describes in his early stages is learning and seeing what MOVE was doing and being able to try to get the truth out.
Mumia doesn't exaggerate. Mumia is the kind of journalist that doesn't exaggerate. I mean, when I write something, I tend to say the greatest and things like that. He doesn't say that. He's pretty low key in how he writes. He's very, very gifted in his ability to create passion and sense, communicate that without embellishing. And he's a truth seeker.
Right.
And he tries to get exactly the truth. So I can see how he must have been upset. I can see him being in the prison from 8 in the morning till 8 at night trying to get the truth and then trying to convey that. And then he was, of course, the journalist. I mean, there were others, you know, Lynn Washington did good work too, but Mumia was relentless. And in the movement, because people didn't understand MOVE, a lot of people missed that every single statement, that message that Mumia would put out would end with "Long live John Africa." Every single statement. So if you want to say Mumia's not MOVE, excuse me, who is he? Who's he quoting? He doesn't say "Long live Karl Marx" or "Long live," you know, he loved a lot of the Panthers, but he has great respect and love for the Panthers, but he doesn't say "Long live Huey Newton" or "Long live this one." He says every single message, "Long live John Africa." So hey folks, have you checked that out? Or are you ignoring what's right in front of you? So you can't love Mumia and admire Mumia so much and not understand his relationship to MOVE.
Because MOVE decided to go against this system through John Africa's teaching, exposing every facet of this system. The system did not like that because people who actually saw that the system for what it was, not what it pretended to be, the things that it was doing to the air, the water, the soil, to women, to animals, was not right. And when MOVE would demonstrate and protest against these different instances, the police would jump us, fight us, and beat us up because the government did not want people to know what was going on, what they were actually doing. They wanted to keep it covered up and make it look like it was, you know, just okay. So when MOVE started exposing them, having demonstrations at the zoos, demonstrations at the police district, and demonstrations at other organizations or other places, the government wanted to shut us down. So they sent the police there to arrest us, to make it look like we were doing something wrong. And then when a confrontation would break out with us and the police, that is how we ended up getting in like confrontations with the police and going to court about police abuse, police brutality, being arrested. But none of our work, which was designed to make people see so they could be strong enough to work for themselves, to not allow the system to hoodwink them and pull the wool over their eyes and not see the system for what it was so they could protect themselves and be healthy. So what this government did was make it look like we were crazy, like we were dirty, and tried to justify everything, all the beatings that we took, all the arrests that we took, to make it look like they were justified for doing what they did to us. So after all these instances over and over, we had bails over millions of dollars, we was arrested over 1,000 times. Finally, the city decided to come August 8th. They wanted to put us out of the house and kick us out of the neighborhood and get rid of us. MOVE said, we are not leaving. This is our home, it's paid for, there's no reason for us to leave. And they put warrants on us, illegal warrants on us, and came in over 600 cops and 3 o'clock in the morning, deluge guns, rifles and everything. They came in, started knocking our house down from the top to the bottom because they wanted to get rid of us. They was shooting deluge guns. We had our babies in there and they knew it. They put water so high in that water. When I was standing up, the water came up to here on me. I had to squat a little bit because I had 2 children with me, and I squatted low enough for them to stand right here on my thighs so their heads could be above water. You know, there was so much smoke being put in, there was so much gas being put in and mixed with water. That is seen as a deadly weapon, that alone. And what happened, my breath started cutting off, and I was like, taking a few, and I swear, that air cleared. I don't know how, I don't know why. All I can know, it was the power of God, because I felt like I was taking my last breath in that basement. and it just cleared. All of a sudden, then I put the children out the window and climbed out behind them, and we went across the street to safety. But this government wanted to annihilate us. They don't want anybody knowing the truth about them, and that didn't work. And when that didn't work, that's when they tried May 13th.
Because a lot of people don't understand that May 13th came about because we were unjustly imprisoned. And all the appeals
Now,
in
1985.
1978,
Excellent.
and when we were put on trial, our trial, all the proceedings lasted 3 years. So finally in 1981, we were sentenced to 30 to 100 years. And we put in all the appeals that were supposed to be put in, knowing we knew that there would be no justice for moving the courts. But we took those proceedings so that we could show people that there was no justice for move. So finally, after our last appeal was filed, our family started going to different officials and politicians and judges saying that we're not going to stand for our family being in prison for the rest of their lives. And it got to the point where they went to all of the neighbors in Osage, and they explained to them how all our appeals were denied and that they were not going to let us sit in jail. And they told them they planned on protesting it, being on the loudspeaker and everything. And the neighbors said they understood because they would want their family to fight for them also. So our family started protesting, drawing attention to it. And in response to this, they sent a bomb. Even after Wilson Good told our family, he met with our family before he became mayor. He was city manager director at the time. And some of our brothers went to meet with him, and he told him, he said, I know your family got railroaded. When I become mayor, I'm going to look into it. We're going to do something about it. Well, he became mayor, and our family called on him about it, said, okay, what are you going to do about the Move 9? And his response was to allow the federal government to drop a bomb, because that's where they got the C4 from the federal government. And our family didn't break any laws. They didn't have any charges on them. They were bombed because they were protesting the unjust imprisonment of the Move 9, which a lot of people don't even realize the situation and circumstances. It's just like one day they bombed our family. People don't even know why they were bombed, but that's why they were bombed, because they gave us 30 to 100 years in prison each. And when the judge was questioned about it by Mumia on national radio, he got so frustrated because Mumia wouldn't let it drop. He said, who shot the cop?
Right.
And finally the judge, Malmet, just almost screamed, I don't know who killed that cop, but it was somebody in that house. He said, you sent 9 people to prison and you don't even know who killed the cop? And that was the last time we heard from Mumia. The next time we called home, that's when they told us that Mumia had been shot. He was in the hospital. They thought he was going to die. And when he did recover, they tried him and put him on death row. That is what led up to it for Mumia.
Because like Suzanne was saying, Mumia was a reporter through our case. And just so everybody is clear about it, we were charged with killing a police officer. And they said the police officer was shot in the back of the head and the bullet traveled downward. Meanwhile, this police officer ramp was facing our basement when he was shot. They had police all surrounded in our areas on rooftops and everything. So it was impossible for Move to have shot that cop from the basement from where we were.
Say that again, because I think that goes over a lot of people's head. According to the laws of physics, it seemed technically impossible for that bullet to have come from that location.
It was no way that it could possibly come. We're down below feet. He's standing up, holding onto the telephone pole out in the open. He's surrounded by police officers, firemen that's shooting bullets into the basement. He's facing the basement, and he gets shot in the back of the head. The bullet travels downward. We're below his feet. That's impossible for Move to have shot that cop. Never to mention that we don't even have weapons charges. So anyway, I mean, you know, it just gets more and more ridiculous that 9 of us were sentenced for the death of 1 cop that was shot by 1 bullet. So what are they saying? All 9 of us put our hand on a trigger at the same time? I mean, it's all impossible and out of anybody's half fair mind of being real. But this is how bad that the government wanted to put us in jail and to shut us up. But it was worse than that. They didn't want to shut us up. They wanted to kill us.
Right.
Because believe me, that August 8th incident, that wasn't just meant to shut up. It was meant to kill and kill everybody in there. I mean, babies, animals, and they didn't care. They just, one officer during our trial, he was asked, well, what did you do when the people were coming out the basement? And he said, I just shot because there was smoke covering the whole streets. I just shot my gun until it got empty. I reloaded it and shot again. Meanwhile, we're all coming out the basement at this time.
And you had a child with you.
2
and
of them.
Two
Two
children with you. So you're coming out the basement. You're, excuse the expression, you're no bigger than a minute. And you have 2 children in your hand, and that arms, and that meant nothing.
That meant nothing to them, nothing to them. And when I got partially across the street, they snatched the children out of my arms and put me in handcuffs and ankle bracelets and took me to the roundhouse.
You know, there was a police videotaping the whole incident from across the street.
Right.
They played that tape in court. And as we're coming out, you can hear the cops that's taping it. They're laughing. You know, oh, look at this little mother. She's coming out. Isn't she such a good mother? Because we were trying to keep them from taking the babies. And they're laughing, but as more of us came out, then you hear them getting angry and more angry. And then finally they said, what did those MFers do? Dig a hole? They were so angry that we came out alive.
Right.
They were angry. You could hear it. They were angry about it, which is why by the time Delbert came out, because he was the last one to come out, they were so angry when he came out and they saw him, they just released all that hatred onto him. And then they made up the stories afterward. He was armed. He didn't have a shirt on. His hands was in the air, clearly, you know, and you could see on the tape, they just grabbed his hands from out the air and start beating on him. There was no resistance, anything, because they were so full of hate and anger that with all of that, we came out alive, that they released it all on him, you know, and people just don't understand that. They think that, we've heard a lot of people say, well, you had to have done something for that to happen. But the only thing we were guilty of is giving them the truth. Because we gave them the truth, they gave us prison. And that's all it's about. In fact, Judge Malmet, when he sentenced us, he made a joke about it. He said, they're always saying they do everything as a family, so I gave them a family sentence. When has ever being a family been a crime? You said we were on trial for murder, but you say you sentenced us because we said we're a family. You know, this is the kind of persecution we have had to face since the above ground chapter of MOVE surfaced in Philadelphia in the early 70s. And all the things that we were fighting for, people didn't understand because the news media was the tool of the politicians.
Right.
They printed what they wanted, what the politicians wanted them to print about us to isolate us and keep people from listening to what we were saying and looking at what was going on.
Right.
So a lot of people felt like we got what we deserved because the politicians used the news media to say that we were crazy.
Right.
We were violent.
Right.
We were dirty.
Right.
And you know how people feel. They felt like, well, you know, what is these people? And,
Right.
you know, get them out here.
Right.
It wasn't until we went to jail, which Janine Africa clearly stated that they made a mistake by sending us to jail because once we went to jail and went to all those different state prisons and were around all those different people, we got to talk to and reach people we would have never been able to reach had we not gone to prison. And that's what happened. In every prison there was a MOVE person. Inmates and staff alike talked about the example and how they said, you know, y'all are nothing like we read about in the news media. And that made them start listening. And when they start listening and watching, they saw that, you know what, y'all are the most honest, hardworking, righteous people I have ever seen. And that's what John Africa meant when he said, you made a mistake by putting them in prison, because the example of MOVE for the teaching of John Africa has gone worldwide.
And we are innocent, and everybody knows it. You know, the cops that did the shooting know it. The judge knew it. Everybody knows we're innocent. And you know that saying about standing the test of time? This is why people feel the way that they do about MOVE, because they know, they've seen that example, and they know that they can trust that example. And our founder, John Africa, told us that consistency is the strength of everything. They've seen MOVE consistent ever since MOVE has been above ground. They've seen us, all they've seen is consistency. You're impressed with the example that we've done in prison. People are impressed with the example we set with animals, with diet, with everything, because that example has not wavered, has not wavered at all. That's why people feel the way they do about us. And we want everybody to know that what you see coming from us has nothing to do with Janet, has nothing to do with Janine. It is the teaching of John Africa that we have followed through these years. 41, as people see us being that prison activity, and I say activity because we did that as loyal and committed to John Africa's teaching as we could, as the way we did everything else when we demonstrated against police brutality, when we demonstrated against the way they mistreated animals, the way they mistreat women. I mean, people saw that in the 70s. MOVE has not stopped. We have not stopped. We have been doing the same thing. Just like people trust the sun because they know the sun's going to come up, just like people trust the air because they know it's going to fill their lungs, they have that kind of feeling for MOVE because they know they can trust us to be consistent, to fight this system and help people get strong so they will not become slaves to this system.
Because you can see they are now seeing the purpose in MOVE. When we first started demonstrating against the exploitation of animals in those puppy mills and zoos, people was like, you know, with all the seriousness going on in the world, why are we worrying about zoos? Until now, you have species that are becoming extinct, and now people are concerned and worried, you know, because they're about to lose the polar bears, they're losing tigers. Now they're like, oh, now I understand what John Africa meant. Why he was concerned about the animals, you know, and the air, environment, all the environment, the issues that John Africa had us demonstrating about those industries, you know, pointing out how the industries is polluting the air, the water, the soil. Everybody was like, oh, but they have levels. But now look at the level of global warming. Now they're getting it. Now they're getting it. And the 3 Mile Island, when we first started demonstrating against 3 Mile Island, John Africa had us putting out about how dangerous it was. Everybody looked at us like, are you kidding? This is progress. What are y'all talking about? And a few years later, 3 Mile Island blew up, caused a problem in the, you know. It's like they now see the importance of what John Africa had been saying for over 40 years, you know. And this is the thing about MOVE, about John Africa's teaching. John Africa teach us to feel about all of life like we feel about ourselves, because we're all connected. And if people would follow that example, that would end the threat to the environment, the threat to the animals, and the threat to each other. Because when I see you the same as I see myself, or the same as I see Suzanne, then I'm going to treat you the same way I treat myself. So that would end racism.
That's so important. That is so important because even more glaring than the teachings of John Africa is the legacy of John Africa. And when you talk about protest, when you talk about protesting, a lot of us, when we hear the word protest, we think of overturning cars or kill all the whiteys I see or something like that. The things you were talking about had nothing to do with that.
No.
It was not race-based, it was planet-based.
Not violent.
And the legacy of John Africa is the incredible love that has held you together through just the sheer abominations that they've laid at your feet. It's mind-blowing.
Everything. You know what kind of family, what kind of love? Like we tell people, we eat together, we drink together, we fight together, we play together, we love together. We are family, and we don't have the same mother. You know what I mean?
Right.
We have the same founder. We have the same teaching, and when you see us closer together than you see a lot of people that have family and blood bonds, they call us blood, because of that belief, because it all goes in the same direction. I was speaking to this one woman the other day. Her son was being bullied, and she was saying, well, what can you do about bullying? And just like bullying, Janine was saying, the source, if there's only one source, all of us come from that source. And when we teach our children to love that source, all that one source, whether it be a person, whether it be an animal, whether it be a tree, to not violate that, when that is indoctrinated in a child from the beginning, then they won't feel that racism. They won't feel that sexism. They won't feel like a bully. I have to do this, you know, to make me feel above somebody else, to elevate myself. But if everybody had the reverence for life, the very life that's filling our lungs, the very life that feeds us, that we couldn't have without that force, if everybody looks at that one thing and connects it all as being a part of it, you can't hurt, because you're not going to snatch away your breath. You know, you're not going to blind your eyes. You know, you're going to do everything that you can to protect that source that gives you life. And this is what we teach our children about all of life. That's why you don't see them like making a difference between races, making a difference between sexes, because we teach them that there's only one source, and we all come from that source. If you stop the air, it's going to affect everybody. But that air works the same way for everybody. The water that quenches our thirst works the same way for everybody. So why would you invade that source and hurt somebody if you're one? Because in hurting you, I'm hurting me. And John Africa teaches us that that is the work that needs to be done to have world peace. You know what I mean? But everybody has got to move, and this is our purpose, to teach, to example, so people can see why when they talk about, you know, the goodness they see in us, the example they see in us, we're setting that example for the world. It's not just for Move, because when the air is clear, your children can breathe that air the same way as we do. But people have got to realize what's going on.
I wanted to say something from a very different angle. While we're listening to these two beautiful sisters with their deep message, and as many people as watching this show, and while people are hearing them where they're going to be performing, they're going to be speaking at an event.
The People's Forum Friday.
People's Forum this Friday night at 7 o'clock. It's going to be a wonderful event. And they've been speaking at homes and many other places, and people are hearing. And people are learning. They're countering something so powerful. And I like to quote Fidel Castro on this. In the last year of his life, Fidel Castro said that the only hope for humanity is if we can somehow get through the media, the international media control of people's consciousness.
Right.
So we have people controlled. I mean, for years, they're out now, they were in 41 years. During that time, yes, there were some Move people speaking. Yes, there was a struggle out here. Yes, there was Mumia. But what it takes to counter the power of this international media that not only controls the those who control this society, not only the bad guys, not only the rich people and the corporate power, but ordinary people.
Right.
Ordinary people, people who are good people, and who are completely misled by this media, and that is so powerful.
And that's the true power.
And that is what, you know, I do a lot of international work, and you know some of it. So, for example, for months and months and months, people would hear what Trump, what the State Department, what the different media people were saying about Venezuela, which was not true, which was clearly not true. But that's what people hear, and that controls people's consciousness. So when it comes to MOVE, being an activist in the movement, I would hear, I mean, I was blessed early in the game to be introduced to some people, one who respected MOVE, like Safia Bukhari, who headed the Free Mumia Coalition here in New York City, and I came to help her. I was really brought in and met MOVE through Safia Bukhari. So Safia would talk differently about MOVE. Alambe Brath would talk differently about MOVE. But it was very limited. And of course, I had access to MOVE. I met MOVE through that work and began to see how my own prejudices and what I thought MOVE was, which I didn't know very much, but that what they were was something completely different from my general feeling that they were very, very different. I don't feel they're that different when I'm with Janet Janine today. They're my friend, they're my sister.
But it's different in a good way. They're not
I don't feel they're
pretentious
alien.
and phony and self-absorbed and shallow,
so
which
that
is
experience
what I'm more accustomed to.
And what people don't have. So I would hear people in the movement, people very, very well-known, widely respected people in the movement, say things about MOVE based completely on what they heard from the media. Because they hadn't known MOVE. They'd say, well, for example, I'll quote some things without quoting the individuals, but if I quoted the individuals, you'd be shocked. So one of the things people would say is, well, you know, their hygiene was a problem. They had too many animals. They had, in one house, they had 20 dogs. I remember this particular one. In one house, they had 20 dogs. They hadn't been in that house. They hadn't counted the number of dogs and whether they were in that one house or 10 houses or who was taking care of them. I hear a lot about how they take care of dogs or cats. I hear a lot about it because I'm friends with MOVE people at this point. But that's not what people heard, and that's not what influenced their consciousness. So people would repeat, very sophisticated people, not realizing they had been controlled by the media, would repeat what. So another quote, MOVE would get up and scream at the people. MOVE was screaming at the police, at the government, at the state. So all these things, distortions, and people would say to me things like, as though they know better than me, of course, because there's always certain, you know, when you think you know everything, you say it like that. So they would say, I know this, someone told me that. Or I know it, you know, without people who are criticizing the government and U.S. imperialism in a million different ways would buy into the lies and the propaganda and accept what the media was putting into their heads. And that is a phenomenon that has, Fidel Castro knew that because he had to live with the distortions of governments and U.S. imperialism and all that against that government and what it did and what the price they paid.
And that's
we
why
see
they
it.
do it.
Yes, exactly.
That's why they do it, because that media is a tool that the government can use that
All the
people
time.
accept and respond to. Whereas if they got out there and said it, people would kind of be suspicious of them. But people,
the media is the truth.
Raised to trust, trust the media.
It's not simply the media, because the media acts in concert with the way we have been programmed to live and accept what is and is not. So even making an argument about dogs, might be food for some sort of conversation, but 100 dogs does not equal a death sentence.
To go through an attack like we went through, and I mean, this is not something you see on TV. This was live. You know, we're sitting in the basement and we're seeing the sparks of the bullets ricocheting off the walls where we're sitting with our kids. You know, and we're seeing the water come in. We're hearing the gunfire. We're seeing the water rise up, and we're feeling like this is our last days. We survived that, and then after all of that, we get put in prison for something we know we didn't do. So we have to have the mindset to deal with that attack, and then to deal with being separated from our family, our kids, and our children, and deal with this situation, and dealing with people who, like you said, because of the things in their mind and listening to the media, they're all hating us because they believed everything that was said about us. So not only are we having to fight with the police, we come to prison, we have to defend ourselves with inmates, other inmates. So we had to establish, through our example, the trust with these inmates also. You know, and we've gone through different confrontations with inmates and staff, because the thing here was, the order was to break us. So every facility we went in, we were isolated, locked away in the hole, kept away from the population, and gone through different things. Like the very first thing, first of all, after that attack, we were down the roundhouse for like 3 days with no food, no anything. We're laying on the metal cots with no mattresses, laying on newspapers and things. And finally, after our arraignment, they put us in a van to take us up to the House of Correction. And we get in the van, it's 2 8-month pregnant women, and myself, Janet, Consuela, and Davita Johnson, and Merle. And Debbie and one of the sympathizers, Sandra, they were 8 months pregnant. We're in the van and we're driving, and all of a sudden the van pulls over to a dock. And it's empty, it's late in the evening, nobody's working, the dock is empty, and they pull in the dock behind this big tractor trailer. So the road people on the road can't see us in the van. They don't see the van. And we're sitting there and we're like, what are we stopping here for? And all of a sudden we can hear the cops outside of the van arguing, saying it's gotta be all of us or we can't do it. So we're like, you know, what are you talking about? You know, and when they kept arguing, we just looked at each other, we said, something wrong is going down here. You know, we didn't know whether they was gonna try to rape us, beat us, kill us, or all three. But we got our handcuffs from behind us to the front, and we put our bodies in front of the pregnant women, and we said, if they open that door, we're just gonna have to fight to the end, because they are planning on doing something to us. And they kept arguing, and finally they said, well, we can't do it, because if all of us don't do it, we can't do it. Meanwhile, we've been sitting in this parking dock area for almost 2 hours. So when they finally decided they couldn't do it, they start driving us to the House of Correction, and they're mad, so they start doing that rough riding, where that, you know how they did the guy and he killed him? They started riding the van like that, doing speeding and sharp turns, and we're jostling. So, you know, we're looking at the pregnant women and we're like, oh no, this isn't gonna happen. We said, okay, so y'all wanna do that? You think you're gonna kill us in this van? We start rocking the van. We said, if we're going, you're going with us. So we start rocking the van, and they got scared and they stopped. They finally stopped. And when we get to the House of Correction, the officers there, when we pull up, they say, where have y'all been? They told us y'all were coming hours ago. Where have you been? And they mumbled some old stuff. We never could hear the explanation, and the officers just accepted it, but they had been waiting for us for like 2 or 3 hours. This is the kind of things that we had to deal with throughout. Every time we went to a different prison, we had to defend our belief and show them that they can't break us. And at each prison that we went to, after they saw that period and they saw that they couldn't break us and they left us alone, then they started seeing that, oh my gosh, you're nothing
like they said.
Like they said. And they might not have liked us, but they had to respect that example. And this is how it has been throughout those 40 years.
And you have some administrators and some officers that just didn't like us, so they would try to make our life difficult. You know, they locked us in isolation and kept the lights on 24 hours a day. They had, me and Janine were cellmates in this one cell. I think the door was about this thick. The windows were like the coated windows that you couldn't see through, but you could only tell if it was day or night. And they had 3 little holes drilled on top of that window. And
that was your source of
That was
air.
your source of air. It got so stuffy in there. They would feed us through trays. There was a slot this big, and they would open up and pass us a paper plate and take it back. So we would keep the paper plate, but it was so hot and humid down there that we had to take turns. I would take the paper plate that they gave us, and Janine would sit down, and I would just do this to wave the air so we could get some circulation. And then after my turn, I would sit down, and Janine would stand and fan so it could get some circulation. It got so bad down there that mold started growing on the doors and the walls and everything down there. And the way that we got out of that situation was some politicians came up, and they were viewing our restricted housing unit. And we started hollering from the back, hey! And the people that came said they wanted to see back there. And once they saw that mold was growing on the wall, and we were put in that kind of situation and in there for, how long did we stay in that situation?
We were in there for about 6 months.
Months. They let us out of that and put us in another cell that had bars, but you could open the door and get air.
Yeah, we've been through a lot of situations, and on top of all of that, you know, in '85, we were still in the hole, and when you're in the hole, you don't have any TV, radio, and you only get a phone call like once a week or something like that. So we don't really know what's going on outside of that restricted housing unit. And the officer came to our door, each door, opened the door and said, your son is dead. Shut the door, went to the next door, and we don't know what's going on. We don't have a clue. And the only way we found out exactly what was going on was there was some of the women there that they deliberately got write-ups to come to the RHU, and they smuggled in newspaper articles and gave it to us. That's how we found out they bombed our family and that they had killed our family. But
a house full of children.
Yeah,
one woman, one child came out.
That's how we found out.
One woman, one child.
Also, we want people to know that we lost our sister Merle and our brother Phil in prisons, and as the prison called it, what kind of suspicious circumstances, but we know the circumstances weren't suspicious. We know exactly what happened to them, and we want people to know that this system will stop at nothing. I mean, it's getting a little harder for them now because people are starting to feel about us the way you feel, so they can't just do that anymore and get away with it. We also want to thank everybody, especially the New York Coalition that has helped support MOVE all these years, you know, and everybody else out there who has helped support us, and most of all, our family. I mean, 41 years is a long time, you know, being away from your family, having phone calls. And, you know, a lot of people there were just neglected. I mean, some because they didn't have family. You know, they would write letters to themselves and get them sent in the mail. Our family never once gave up on us. They were always there for us.
Incredible.
We needed
the
anything,
family was incredible.
There. We love our family, and our family loves us because of our belief, the teaching of John Africa.
And while we were in there, we always heard about all the work being done, all the people that was helping our MOVE family. And when we would call and they would tell us about it, they would say, we're telling you about it, but you have to see it.
Right.
And we got a little experience with it because whenever an incident happened in the prison where they were threatening to harm us physically or lock us in the hole for no reason, they would back off because they would be getting phone calls from France, from Germany, from England, from New York, from Spain. This is the kind of support we have had and our family have had helping them for all of these years. And we just appreciate and want to thank everybody because it has not gone with no gratitude or unforgotten, you know, and our family always tell us about it. They've just constantly through the years, you know, all the names, we can't even remember all the names of the people that have been there with our family, but they talk about them warmly and just because, you know, we're strong, our belief is strong, but it always helps when you have a good support around you and a lot of love around you. It just insulates and builds up and strengthens that foundation that you have. And I'm telling you, when this government saw how people around the world were starting to see that they were being watched, it helped back them off of us because they would have done a lot more things to us in those prisons if they thought they could get away with it.
We had such a warm welcome home reception from Suzanne. I'm telling you, the vibration in that room was so powerful, so cohesive. I mean, it just like did my heart so good. It made me feel good about the work that I have done all these years and will continue to do, to see that it, just like when you throw a pebble into it and you just see it.
Right.
I mean, if I could explain it to words how that vibration was in that room, and she had people from all different facets, all different organizations in that room, it's just uncomparable.
All different races, and see, this is the importance.
It was
and this
wonderful.
is what
Thank you,
don't
Suzanne.
want.
Well, I have
People
to
don't
say,
want this. They don't want this. They don't want
No.
unity. They don't want people to come together from all different facets for one common cause. They don't want that. You know, this is why they tried to kill us, and when they couldn't, they wanted to lock us away in jail for the rest of our lives because they count on the disjoint amongst people, the disconnect, because a superintendent at Muncie told us and the girls, she said, I only do what you allow me to do.
Right.
And so when you have everybody going in different directions and one facet is fighting with another one over some reason, and everybody's, I don't want to work with them because they do this. When you have that, they're allowed to just go through and just spread their poison and just do what they want. But when you have everybody saying, you know, I might not particularly agree with your cause, but we have one cause that need to be dealt with is equality and justice for everybody, and you have everybody focused on that, they can't get through that because everybody's focusing on what is truly the threat. You know, blacks are not a threat to whites, whites are not a threat to blacks, Asian, Chinese, that's not the threat. You know, and that's what people have to be able to see, and this is what they want to stop, because Janine Africa uses the truth to give everybody direction, to direct us together so that we can work together as a unit.